Welcome on behalf of the Long Island Progressive Coalition. My name is David Sprinson, and this is, I think, about the 54th in our regular series of public forums held at the Huntington Library on usually the fourth Thursday of the month. Okay? And this evening we have a presidential forum with 4 of the candidates being represented. I will introduce them in a moment and who they represent, the individuals who they represent, and each one will speak for approximately 10 minutes, no more, perhaps less. We'll respond for about 3 minutes, and then the rest will be for you to any comments you have to make, so long as you keep them respectful. You can make comments, you can ask questions. Try to limit it to 1 minute so as we can go around. If you've done it once, you can come back and do it another time. We have to be out of here by 9 o'clock. That's the agreement with the library. So that gives us an hour 45 minutes. That should be sufficient. Okay. So hopefully this will be pleasant and informative. I hope everybody has signed in with our introduction, so we know people have come. We can inform you of future forums. And to let you know also that the Huntington Chapter of the Long Island Progressive Coalition, which organizes these forums, meets monthly also. It meets on the 3rd Tuesday of each month, and it meets at the Cinema Arts Center, in the Sky Room of the Cinema Arts Center. And so everybody, of course, is welcome to attend. Okay. So we have 4 speakers for the 4 candidates in the order in which they selected random pieces of paper. First will be the speaker on behalf of Democratic candidate Barack Obama, and that will be Jon Cooper, who is the majority leader of the Suffolk County Legislature, and he is the Long Island campaign chair for the Obama campaign. The second will be Chris Garvey, who has run for many offices around. I debated Chris Garvey, I think, once when he ran for governor. In fact, that was many years ago. And Chris will be here speaking on behalf of Barr. Third will be Roger Snyder, who was the chair of the Green Party of Suffolk County. I remember when he was working at the print shop about 45 years ago. At least to produce all of our stuff. And Roger will speak on behalf of Cynthia McKinney. And last, in this round of discussion, speaking on behalf of John McCain will be Mark Zablocki, who is the McCain Leadership Committee Assistant Professor of Business and Technology at Barr College, and a 2-time former candidate for Huntington Highway Superintendent. And each one of the speakers will come up here so as to be able to use the microphone, to be on the camera, which will be reproduced on public access TV. We begin now with Jon Cooper.
Thank you very much. Good evening. I wanted to thank the Long Island Progressive Coalition for hosting this event. As per the introduction, I am a local elected official. I run a manufacturing company in Nassau County with about 175 employees, and my domestic partner and I have 5 adopted kids, and we live here in Huntington. I've been involved in politics as an elected official for about 9 years now, but I had gotten involved supporting candidates, particularly at the federal level, that I believed in for a number of years before that. Cameron McCarthy, Gary Ackerman, 2 congressmen, congresspeople that I have tremendous respect for. Chuck Schumer, Hillary Clinton, raised $100,000 for Hillary during her first Senate campaign. Bill Clinton. I was on Al Gore's National Finance Committee and John Kerry's National Finance Committee. But when this election rolled around, I knew I couldn't support Hillary this time because of her vote for the Iraq War authorization, which for me was a defining issue. I was vehemently opposed to the Iraq War from the outset. I was looking around for another candidate to support instead, and I had heard all this hype about the senator from Illinois, Barack Obama. I had heard him speak at the 2004 convention, and he was obviously a very eloquent and charismatic speaker. But I got invited to a reception with Barack in Manhattan in February of '07. He had just announced his candidacy for the presidency a few weeks before that, and I decided to attend the event to check him out and see if there was any substance behind all the hype. And maybe about 75 people there. When Barack walked into the room, first thing I thought was, my God, this guy is young, because he looks a lot older now because he's got a lot of gray hairs. But he struck me as young, but it immediately became apparent to me how smart this guy was. And he spoke extemporaneously for an hour and a half on every issue you can think of, whether it was education or healthcare or the environment or alternative energy or foreign policy, Iraq, the economy, on and on. So he was extremely bright, clearly charismatic, but most important for me, he struck me as someone who was straightforward, down to earth, and honest. He struck me as an honest politician, which unfortunately you don't run across too often. I had the opportunity to speak with Brock privately at the event, and part of my conversation I introduced myself, and I said, I'm Jon Cooper, I'm Majority Leader of the Suffolk Legislature, and my domestic partner and I have been together, at that time it was 27 years, now it's 28 years, and we have 5 adopted kids, and I pulled out of my vest pocket the holiday card that we had sent out a couple weeks earlier, and had a photo of our 5 kids on it. So Brock comments on my beautiful family. But then I said, Senator, I know that you've been a strong supporter of gay rights in the past as a senator from Illinois, but now that you're running for president, I hope that you'll remain a strong and consistent advocate for LGBT equality. And Barack put his hand on my shoulder and looked me in the eye and he said, John, we're going to get there together. We'll get there together. And it sent a chill down my spine. It still does to this day. But I just knew that this guy gets it. And whether it's equal rights for women or for African Americans or for gays, it's something that he feels in his heart. So he's good on gay rights. He's smart. He's charismatic. Great sense of humor. Personable. Genuinely nice guy. I've now met him maybe a dozen times. In settings ranging from 50 to 75 up to 35,000 and everything in between. But the more I've gotten to know him, the more times I've met him, the more respect I have for the man. I happen to agree with him on virtually every issue, or he agrees with me. I'm not sure which way that goes. But we're facing such dire problems in our country right now. Obviously, now everyone is focused on the economy and the mortgage crisis and pending recession, and certainly that's a tremendously important issue, and I'm glad that the one silver lining is that it's finally gotten the media to focus for the first time in this very long campaign on the important issues in the race, rather than lipstick on a pig and lapel pins and all these peripheral issues that are diversions, and I believe play in the hands of the McCain campaign. Now we're finally focusing on the real issues of the race. And I also have to say, I've served as a surrogate for Barack many times during the primary and during the general election. And back during the primary, when there were still 4 or 5 Republicans running, I would often start off my speech by explaining the great deal of respect that I had for John McCain. And I was looking forward to a campaign that was going to be run on the issues as he had pledged at that time. And I have to say that I am bitterly disappointed in the campaign that John McCain has chosen to run, chosen to wage. The low point, and many low points, but the lowest of the low points was that despicable commercial that he aired a couple weeks ago, the sex education, kindergarten sex education commercial, which, for those of you who sort of, anyway, completely below the belt, completely distorted Barack's record. He was actually in support of a bipartisan bill with Republican support to try to teach young kids the difference between good touches and bad touches and to protect them from sexual predators. And the McCain campaign completely twisted the ad. Shame on them. But my hope is that now we'll be able to, with the acquiescence perhaps of the media, we'll be able to focus for the first time in the remaining days of the campaign on issues like the economy and how do we best achieve universal health care and how do we achieve energy independence and how do we bring our troops home from Iraq and all these issues that at least drove me to this race. We'll have an opportunity later to speak about specific positions on specific issues. But I just want to say that I've been doing this for many years. As I said, I've supported numerous candidates in the past. I have never felt this way about another elected official as I feel about Barack Obama. I have, even though I have other jobs, I have my business, which is hopefully going to put my 5 kids through college, and my position as majority leader of the Suffolk legislature, but 90% of my time now I'm spending on the Obama campaign. The only thing that doesn't pay me a penny, but I'm doing it because I so believe in what Barack is trying to achieve for our country. And my very first meeting with him that night in Manhattan, he talked about the need to bring about transformational change in the way that Washington works. He explained exactly how he was going to do it. His message has not changed one iota, not one iota, from that first day, 2 or 3 weeks after he announced. Of course, McCain, or actually all the other candidates, none of them spoke about change at that time. Now everyone's talking about change. But Barack Obama is the only one who has been consistent. He has come up with concrete, detailed proposals on any issue that you can think of, whether it's healthcare, whether it's the environment, whether it's the mortgage crisis, whether it's Iraq. Visit his website, barackobama.com. You'll find position papers, you'll find fact sheets, you'll find downloadable speeches. There are literally thousands upon thousands of pages on that website if you desire to learn more about his position. So anyone who says that Barack has not been specific about, and then you fill in the issue, has not made the effort to learn what his position is. So hopefully we'll have a chance to speak about that a little bit tonight. But I just want to close by saying how I have no doubt whatsoever that Barack Obama not only will win New York, I think he'll win New York handily, but I'm absolutely confident that he will be the next president of the United States. And I'm so excited about the prospect of Barack Obama sitting in the Oval Office come January 20th of next year, the impact that will have on our nation, bringing our nation together, finally healing the racial wounds in this country, but just as importantly, the new face it will put on our nation before the world, and restoring American prestige, not just with our allies, but also with our enemies. It's an exciting time to be involved. I've said repeatedly, this is not a political campaign. This is a political movement. I absolutely believe this is a political movement, a transformational, historic political movement. Any supporter of Barack Obama, you can play a part in this during the primary. We had 1,200 volunteers, grassroots folks, that got involved in the race. As many of you may know, the Obama campaign has upended how you run political campaigns. It's been a totally grassroots-driven campaign from the ground up. In New York State, can anyone guess how much money we got from either the state Obama campaign or the national campaign when we ran the Long Island primary? Anyone want to guess? Correct answer is yes, you win. 0. She made like this. We didn't get a penny. Everything was done locally. They empowered local people to make decisions. We got feedback. We were able to interact with Chicago and the New York office, but we made all the decisions locally. I can't begin to count the number of people that were involved in the Obama campaign during the primary that had certainly never been active in a campaign before, but in many cases had never voted in their entire lives. And they were showing up at 5:30 in the morning at train stations to hand out literature, manning phone banks until 9:30 at night, showing up at weekends because they felt empowered for the first time. They felt that they had a stake in this race. They knew this was history in the making. They knew that we, working together, would be able to bring about real change in Washington. I have no doubt that we'll be able to do it. And I welcome the support of anyone that would like to get involved in the remaining days. Thank you.
And now Chris Garvey from the Libertarian Party speaking on behalf of Barr.
You may have seen me in some of the other, primary debates supporting Ron Paul, but Ron Paul's not running for president anymore. So, and I'm also a longtime libertarian, so Bob Barr is where I've shifted my support. Let's talk immediately about the first issue that, and the most relevant one right now, and that's this next bailout. Ron Paul on the 17th did a press release on the earlier bailouts, and I'll just read from his own website. Richard Nixon once said, "We're all Keynesians now," meaning that Republicans and Democrats alike believed in government micromanagement of the economy. It appears that George Bush should say that we're all socialists now. He explained that the government has taken over the insurance giant AIG with an $85 billion loan for which it received an 80% equity stake in the company. In other words, the federal government will now own and run one of the nation's largest insurance companies. This administration, supposedly devoted to free markets and fiscal responsibility, has bailed out the housing industry, the quasi-government mortgage companies Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, the investment house Bear Stearns, and the leading insurer. What's next, asked Barr. Well, that was 10 days ago, so now we know what's next, another $600 billion, perhaps $1 trillion. The deficit this year will run a record $407 billion. Next year the red ink will be even greater, and there are trillions upon trillions of dollars that are due under Medicare and Social Security as the baby boomers retire. Moreover, the latest bailouts are being made in secret by the Federal Reserve. At least the housing and Fannie Mae bailouts came with congressional authority, if not understanding. However, no one voted to pour taxpayer funds into Wall Street, and no one voted for government to take over an insurance company. If the Federal Reserve can spend as much money as it desires to bail out any company that it desires, is there anything that it cannot do with taxpayer funds, asked Barr. Well, I guess the answer to that is they can do anything. President Bush should fire Treasury Secretary Henry Paulson. We need a Treasury Secretary who can be trusted with the keys to the taxpayer vault. It's imperative for Congress to explicitly limit the authority of the Federal Reserve. The Fed was not created to take over parts of the U.S. economy. Its authority must be limited, and its officials must be held accountable for their actions. Capitalism involves losses as well as profits. When government tries to insulate businesses and investors from paying for their mistakes, we all lose. In a Barr administration, there will be no corporate bailouts or takeovers. The days of loss-free capitalism would be over. Now, I heard a statistic, I haven't been able to check it out, that all the defaulted mortgages could be paid off with something like $60 billion. Paid off, not just kept out of default, but paid off completely. So why we're spending $600 billion for the purpose of bailing out some companies, something's not right here. My quarrels with Obama and McCain involve the repeal of the Bill of Rights. Obama voted for the extension of the Patriot Act and for telecom immunity. So he's voted to repeal the Fourth Amendment, which protects us and our information and our telephone conversations and our letters and papers against unreasonable search and seizure. McCain voted to repeal the First Amendment with the McCain-Feingold bill. Now, Rehnquist said, if I could show you an example of how that bill was designed to hurt third parties, would you admit that it's an impermissible bill? And he felt that it was probably designed to hurt third parties, and we believe it is. I mean, as the Libertarian Party, we had worked out a nice system of financing where the states would take in new members of the party and refer them to a telephone number with a central database down in Washington. Washington would process the checks and send us half the proceeds. That became illegal under McCain-Feingold, so they must have figured out what we were doing. I also heard they studied the entire campaign of Ross Perot and made sure that everything that he did to raise money was illegal. So they've attempted to felonize third parties. They certainly have made it necessary that you hire a lawyer before you buy a campaign ad about a incumbent congressman, and so for that reason we called that act from the time they were pushing it the Incumbent Protection Act. And the previous act was designed to stop guys like Senator McCarthy, not the guy from the 50s, but the peace candidate, whose campaign was jump-started with a $5 million campaign fund contribution by 5 multimillionaires. And they made it impossible by limiting the chunks of money so that no group of renegade millionaires could go against the Democratic establishment or the Republican establishment for that matter. So we're upset at McCain for that, and I'm upset at Obama for repealing the Fourth Amendment or keeping it repealed with the renewal of the Patriot Act and the immunity for telecoms. Some of the other issues, the United States should talk to Iran. And I don't think I have to explain that further, but it seems pretty stupid not to talk to the people who you regard as your enemies. It's the failure to have serious and ongoing contact between the U.S. and the Iranian government makes any settlement much more difficult. One of the top priorities of the Barr administration would be to undertake a serious and substantive dialogue with Iran. Let the people go home. FEMA and other government agencies are keeping people down in Galveston from going back to their homes, and we think that's just kind of tyrannical. It's their homes. They should be given the option to go back. Other issues. Private charity should be the first resort for anyone in need. In 2007, for example, Americans gave more than $300 billion to charity, which is an increase despite growing economic uncertainty. Government should eliminate regulatory barriers that inhibit private philanthropy and expand tax deductions to encourage charitable giving. Energy policy, let's get the government out of the subsidy business and the regulation business for energy development. Should eliminate restrictions that inhibit energy production, as well as all special privileges for the production of politically favored fuels, such as ethanol. Ethanol is a big hoax, and anybody wants to talk to me about that, I'll explain how ethanol does not make our cars burn cleaner. It makes the cars less efficient, and it causes vapor lock in my 1988 Fiero. Privacy and surveillance. We may not yet be in the nightmare world of George Orwell's classic 1984, but time is fast running out for a society that values freedom and liberty. Certainly the government must be able to confront crime and terrorism, but its powers must be limited to those truly necessary to protect Americans and which are consistent with the Constitution. Also, government officials must always be accountable for their actions. Iraq, the invasion and occupation of Iraq were two separate mistakes which collectively have cost thousands of American lives and hundreds of billions of U.S. taxpayer dollars. Every day the occupation in Iraq continues without a withdrawal plan is a day that more Americans' blood and treasure, some $400 million a day, is needlessly wasted. Foreign intervention and foreign bases, let's close them all and bring our military home. Should I elaborate? That was a synopsis. It's time to re-emphasize the word defense and national defense by maintaining a military presence in more than 130 nations around the world with more than 700 installations with hundreds of thousands of troops deployed overseas. The U.S. spends more to protect the soil of other nations than our own. Bringing these soldiers home would better protect America while saving lives and money. Veterans, defending the liberties that we enjoy in the United States by serving the armed forces is one of life's most honorable pursuits. Our veterans who have sacrificed much and risked all to protect America, often paying in their own blood, deserve our support both during their time of duty and thereafter. And if anybody's been following what's been happening to veterans, they're not getting that support. Federal health care programs, most notably Medicare and Medicaid, have become financially unsustainable. These programs need to be transformed to emphasize patient choice, focus on the truly needy, and add cost-saving incentives. Here too, market principles should be applied to bring better quality health care at lower cost. Let's see. Property rights and eminent domain. Allowing governments at any level to confiscate property without a compelling justification represents a serious attack on fundamental liberty. Government's most basic duty is to protect individual rights, including that of private property, not to diminish them. Tax reform is desperately needed in the United States, but before we can reform the tax code, we must sharply reduce the tax burden on Americans. And I've got 1 minute left. The Declaration of Independence states that all men are created equal. Government should make no law that discriminates based on race, religion, sexuality, or any other personal characteristic. Government laws should respect each person as an individual and treat them equally as such. Monetary policy. The Federal Reserve is a secretive and unaccountable organization that dominates monetary policy, regulates financial institutions, and increasingly intervenes in economic markets. Congress must insist on accountability and transparency in the Federal Reserve's operation while reconsidering the Fed's almost total control over the money supply. Of course, Ron Paul had a slightly simpler position: abolish it. Okay, and
Thank you, Chris. Third, speaking on behalf of the Green Party's candidate, Cynthia McKinney, is Roger Snyder, chair of the Long Island Green Party.
All the third parties do this.
Oh, okay. Yeah, the third party's kind of squeezed between the two major ones. We're kind of used to that. I'm chair of the Green Party in Suffolk. It's kind of, I always think it reminds me of when running a small business. It's kind of like small business, you know, the floor doesn't get swept at the end of the day and there's no one else around to do it. You do that. So you go and you take care of everything that needs to be done. One of the things is promoting the party and promoting its candidates, which actually I enjoy, because you get to go out, you get to meet people, you get to talk with them. And when I have run for office, I would watch the debates, say the News 12 debates, the televised debates, and I always notice when there's a Green Party candidate in the debates change. I'd watch all of the debates, and where we'd run candidates, what would be addressed would be changed, how would be addressed would be changed. Things came up that were, in the other debates, were never even touched on. And for me, that's rewarding, that you have an effect, even if your candidate doesn't win. Just being there makes a difference. I'm here, I'm a white guy from Long Island who's representing a African-American woman from Georgia, so I'll pull some stuff out in her voice, and it might sound funny, but, you know, we'll go with that. One other point I want to make, sometimes I'll refer to Democrats and Republicans in particular, and really I mean the Democratic Party and Republican Party. I mean, my extended family is mostly Democrats and Republicans. You know, I have good friends of Democrats and Republicans. You know, the story, it's people make a change. Unfortunately, institutions don't want to change. The question would be, why consider Cynthia McKinney? Some people feel the votes don't count for lack of election integrity. Some people want to see an end to the war. That hasn't happened despite a Republican president and a Democratic majority in Congress. Some people mourn the loss of civil rights. You have different people that have reached the same conclusion, that the two-party paradigm doesn't serve their interests anymore. But instead of withdrawing from it, we say, let's change it. You know, it's a flawed, failed system, but Greens have thought through the process and how to make it work better. If you feel that something in your heart is structurally wrong with the limited choices you have in the two-party system, the time would be now to look elsewhere. Public policy now is made, it's a locked room. You have two representatives, you have the Democratic Party, Republican Party, you have corporate lobbyists. They have the key to the room. They can come and go whenever they want, but what we propose, what the Green Party proposes, and why we run a candidate for president is to open the door for people who care about impeachment, the war, civil liberties, economic justice. We want to pull up, we want to have a part of the conversations. You get different results, and people won't feel as if they're marginalized. And different results was a phrase that came out from Cynthia McKinney, and I thought about it. Albert Einstein defined insanity as doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. The two-party system, sticking with it is insane, because you're going to get the same results, and we're not happy with those results. Cynthia McKinney has a 10-point plan. I'll get to a little bit with more specifics. There are papers in the back that enumerate the different parts of her plan, what she plans to do on a number of issues, her positions. You can go to her website, which is votetruth08.com, and there's more material being put out every day. There's just an economic thing being put out. So there's only so much specifics we can cover here, and I'm certainly happy to answer questions. but I try to go through a general thing. The importance of her campaign. This is a quote. Larry Pinckney, its editorial board member of the Black Commentator, explained it this way. He quote, Sister Cynthia McKinney has both the credibility and the capacity to truly excite the people in substantive versus superficial fashion, and can inspire people to see that they themselves, we ourselves, are the only viable solution to Republicans and their flawed and corrupt electoral system. We must move the people beyond from being excited about meaningless superficialities that do nothing to address systematic change, to being excited about substance that is the catalytic for systematic change. McKinney's campaign is needed to lay the groundwork for building a political movement for real change. The sentiment, this is from a political activist in DC, from their blog. They say, quote, we need to be about the business of thinking and acting outside the box and building political parties outside the box. Parties that serve the economic, social, and political interests of the masses of the people. That is precisely why the candidacy of former U.S. Congresswoman Cynthia McKinney for president is of such enormous importance to the present and for the future. This coalition is all about collectively laying the foundation for systematic change, which is the only way we can enjoy real change. And I'm going to go just kind of quickly. She has a 10-point plan. Cynthia McKinney has presented a 10-point plan, and go quickly through the points to give a basis of where she stands on some of the issues. Freedom now. The 10-point plan starts with freedom. Freedom consists of election integrity. How can we hold elections and not be sure that the results actually reflect the will of the voters? If you can't even be sure who you're voting for is going to win, or who the majority of people voting for is going to win, then there's no point in participating. And unfortunately, too many people feel that way. We also want to have voter choice, which is why we're interested in running third parties. And if you notice, a number of the third parties have actually gotten together and said, we will work together on what we have in common is to promote voter choice. We want civil liberties, repeal the Patriot Act, the Secret Evidence Act, the Military Commissions Act, other legislation that rolls back bedrock civil liberties. Full employment now, point 2, includes the right to organize, repeal of the free trade agreements, greening the economy, jobs at a livable wage, justice for immigrant workers, and an end to the guest worker program, amnesty and a path to documentation of the workers that are already in this country, equal pay and equal work. It's a shame that minorities, it's more than a shame, it's intolerable. Women, minorities work in the same job as white men, receive less pay. Self-determining reparations now. Resources for human needs now. Budget for human needs instead of corporate greed includes a single-payer form of health care. Full reproductive rights for women, safe access to comprehensive prenatal, postnatal, and family planning services, subsidized higher education. We have students that graduate from college with tens to hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt. We need health care that can allow parents to continue with their education. Many people get stuck, they need to continue, they want to improve their jobs. We need health care, affordable health care that can facilitate that. Obviously, we need affordable housing. We know that on Long Island there are people who cannot live in the areas that they work because they just cannot afford to do it. We need to repeal the Bush tax cuts and make the rich pay their fair share and take appropriate steps to regain control over the monetary system. Stop the war at home now. We need to free the political activists that have been imprisoned by the various COINTELPRO and similar programs from the 60s to the present. We need to end the disparities in sentencing in the criminal justice system as a whole. We change the policy to punish those guilty of racial profiling that often result in disparate treatment at each step of the criminal justice system. End the war on drugs now. The war on drugs provides cover for U.S. military intervention in foreign countries. Militarization is used to put down protest movements in countries like Mexico, Colombia, Peru, Ecuador, others. And we need a budget that is focused instead on prevention and treatment, and prisons for profit now, and the privatization of prisons and prison health care services, and the racism that serves as an engine for growth of this profit-driven industry, and prison labor schemes that are little more than corporate subsidies and provide little training or rehabilitation for inmates. Race and class must not serve as the primary determinants of punishment, and of course, ending the death penalty. Environmental protection. We call for the protection of the environment in recognition that we've got to green our lifestyle in this country. We need to do more to reduce waste. Workers should not be exposed to toxic conditions. We want renewable energy. We don't want nuclear energy. You know, working with David, working on Long Island for years, we spent years closing all the plants on Long Island. And look at either the Democratic or Republican candidate. They're both pro-nuke, and they receive a lot of their money from the nuclear industry. We proclaim that war is not an acceptable energy policy. End environmental racism. Communities should be preserved and local economies using local resources should be encouraged. End demilitarism now. Point 9. U.S. troops stationed in more than 100 countries around the world must come home now. Homeless veterans must be kept off the streets and cared for. We must keep the promise that we made to the veterans for health care for a full lifetime. We want military recruiters out of our schools, off our campuses. We need to end the funding for war, the products for war, preparation for war, intelligence for war, and funds used to destabilize other countries or to maintain or expand U.S. military presence at home and abroad. And point number 10, peace now. Two parties of the corporate rule are not offering the vision of peace and partnership. We must reject the policies of political and economic destabilization that we witness played out on the African continent, Latin America, in the Caribbean, Muslim world, and in Asia. End all wars and occupation by U.S. forces, including Iraq and Afghanistan. Institute a Department of Peace. We need a complete renunciation of the preemptive war doctrine. We need to respect the right of all peoples to self-determination. Sadly, the Bush-Pelosi war policy is a formula for endless global conflict, deterioration of the rule of law among nations, and a growing impoverishment, indebtedness, and evisceration of civil liberties at home, and that has to stop. Thank you very much.
Now speaking on behalf of Republican candidate John McCain is Mark Zablocki from the McCain Leadership Committee and the Assistant Professor of Business and Technology at Briarcliff College.
Thank you. I'm not exactly sure where to start because there were a number of ideas thrown out here, so I think I'm going to go in a slightly different direction and try to bring this in. When we are selecting, as we do, the arguably leader of the free world, and it's our responsibility to do so. What do we look for? Well, as you all know, and has already been told, I ran for office twice. I am still active on the Republican committee, and I've served on a candidate screening committee a number of times. What you look for, and what I look for, you know, there was always a question I asked of every candidate that came before us looking for the party's endorsement. And that was, what was at core? What do you believe? What is the guiding principle that should cause me to support your candidacy? See, we all know about the issues that are there now, but we don't know what issues are percolating out there. They're not in front of us yet. The ones in front of us are, and they are critical. But what about the ones to come? Leadership comes from judgment. Leadership comes from seeing a problem area develop and then acting on that. I have so much in front of me right now that honestly, I don't know in 10 minutes that I could get through it all. But let me put it this way. I want to address some of the issues that were brought forward one at a time. And I also want to respond to the charge about scurrilous advertising, because Senator McCain has been the victim of probably more of that than at any other point, in addition to responses to advertising statements that are falsehoods, plain and simple. First off, with regard to Iraq, good people can disagree on an issue. The fact is that the first Gulf War never ended. There was a ceasefire. It was being enforced. Our aircraft were flying no-fly zones over the north and south of Iraq for the purpose of protecting the Kurds in the north and the Shia in the south. They were regularly had radar locked on. They had missiles fired at them. We responded at the time. Concurrent with this was intelligence that the CIA developed, which is questionable, but also was agreed with by and concurred with by the United Nations, Jordan, Egypt, Britain, Germany, France, plus a host of other nations. A decision had to be made. Whether that decision or whether that decision was the correct one or not, that's another matter. But a decision was made to take down the Saddam Hussein regime for a number of different reasons. There were 22 in the original authorization to use force. Of those, 21 have been met. The Iraqis are preparing for their third free elections. They have their own government. We have been for months in negotiating with them for a status of forces agreement and a strategic framework agreement. They're two separate agreements, but they are inextricably linked. So what happened and why did we end up there for a period of 4, 5, 6 years? What occurred essentially was this. The Saddam regime fell rather quickly. We all know that. It was a matter of weeks. At the same time, concurrent with that, Osama bin Laden put out words in several of his messages, videotaped and audio taped messages, that Iraq was now the center of the struggle. And jihadis from literally all over the Middle East began to flow in. That became the second war. That was an asymmetrical war. Were mistakes yet made? Absolutely. Paul Bremer made several in not enlisting the aid of the Sunni tribal chiefs when it was originally offered to him. Many others along the way. But the cost of simply withdrawing, which seems to be the easy and most reasonable way out, in fact was too high. Because throughout his messages, whenever whenever Osama bin Laden, I called it Ted Kennedy there, whenever Osama bin Laden spoke of the United States, he spoke of a paper tiger. He pointed to Vietnam, he pointed to Somalia, he pointed to Beirut, time and time again. His point was that if you make us bleed, we will run away. That would leave 25 million people in Iraq and 25 million people in Afghanistan at the mercy of a bunch of head-cutting lunatics. And we know this. Those videotapes have been out there. So what do? Do you leave and then supply this organization with the material that they believe they need to conscript more, or do you respond to it in a different way to try to win it? McCain was a lone voice for a long time speaking in favor of putting more troops on the ground. Why did it work? Senator Obama rightly stated that it worked because there was a convergence of events. One of them was the Sunni awakening, where the Sunni got tired of the barbaric approach that Al-Qaeda and its associates were taking, and they responded by attacking Al-Qaeda. But that would not have happened without a change in strategy and the additional troops. Instead of clearing an area out and then moving on so the rats could come back in, what was done with the surge was that the areas were cleared and then they were held. This provided a level of security that did not exist before for the people that were there. I'm not going to bring forward, and you wouldn't either, information to an occupying force if you know that they're going to leave next week and the people that I provided intelligence on are going to come back in. They're barbarians. I'm a target. I'm not going to do that. But once the Iraqi people saw that there was confidence that the Iraqi army itself and the coalition forces would hold on to an area, they began to bring in more and more and more actionable intelligence. One of the worst provinces in Iraq was Anbar province. Anbar province was where you find Fallujah, Ramadi, and a bunch of other towns that were totally, completely under Al-Qaeda control. Anbar province 2 weeks ago was turned over to complete Iraqi military control. The Iraqi people have had two and are preparing for a third free election. They have confidence in their military. They have confidence that their military is not the arm of a secret service organization that I believe the last estimate I heard was somewhere around 4 million Iraqis that were killed by the Saddam Hussein regime. One of the things that's constantly talked about is no weapons of mass destruction. What was completed 2 months ago was the move of 550 tons of yellow cake, remember yellow cake, Joe Wilson? Yellow cake uranium from Iraq to Canada, where it has been secured. The point is that at the time the decision was being made to support the surge or not, Senator McCain spoke forcefully for it. Senator Obama said it would fail. In fact, he maintained on his website that the surge was a failure all the way through his trip to Iraq on his fact-finding tour. His fact-finding tour, of course, you need to understand, was a bit of a fraud, because the day he left, the New York Times published his plan for Iraq. Well, if he's going on a fact-finding tour to put a plan together, how is it that he's already got his plan published? So that's one area. Another area is the, and what other speakers have brought out, is the current financial crisis. It is a crisis, there's no question about it. Mr. Barr's representative has spoken forcefully that the government does not belong in the marketplace. And to a degree that's true. In fact, to a great degree that's true. The reason for that is the government is a behemoth. It's a huge organization with a lot of money that can sway markets one way or the other. So it's meant to stay out. However, it has to be understood that the genesis of this is 30 years ago. The genesis of this problem is a problem that there were good intentions, noble intentions, that were delivered badly. The regulations forced lenders to write bad mortgages. These mortgages were then sold to Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac. They bundled these into bases to sell mortgage-backed securities. They're coming from government-sponsored enterprises. So there's an assumption of, I'm sorry?
We made them do it.
Beg pardon?
We made them do it. We've heard it. Go ahead.
These securities were then sold elsewhere. These securities were then sold elsewhere. When it became published, Senator McCain called for a bipartisan blue ribbon panel to look into the source of the problem. He is not a Johnny-come-lately to this. Fact is that the administration had been moving on, cleaning up Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac's act since 2002. In 2006, Senator McCain rose to the floor of the Senate sponsoring, sponsoring the the Federal Housing Enterprise Regulatory Reform Act 2005, which was intended to clean up the accounting system that was being used. The unfortunate thing about it is that it did fail. But 2 years ago, he saw what was coming. The White House saw it. Actually, 6 years ago, there was no action on it. Senator Obama chose to point out that there was no reason for a blue ribbon committee, and never gave a reason for it, but perhaps the explanation might lie in the top 5 recipients of political contributions from Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are all Democrats, and the number 3 at $105,000 was Senator Barack Obama. So perhaps that's where it came from. It is a complex issue, and I would be happy to discuss it with anybody that wants to follow the pathway. To be sure, individuals from both parties are involved in this up to their necks, but there is a need to examine why this happened and make certain it doesn't happen again. Thank you.
Okay. Now what we'll do is we'll give each one of the representatives 3 minutes and try to limit clearly to 3 minutes to respond, and then we'll have the opportunity for everybody here to make their comments or questions using that microphone. We'll get to that in a moment, but let's go in the same order we had it before with Jon Cooper representing Barack Obama.
I don't know where to start. I definitely cannot do this in 3 minutes. But first of all, and I have a lot of respect for Roger Snyder, and much of what he laid out for the Green Party actually is Senator Obama's position. But just one brief comment, and I'm going to leave it. Opposition to the fighting the war in Afghanistan. Give me a break. That's where we should be devoting our military resources. That's where Osama bin Laden is. That's where Al-Qaeda is. And it's entirely appropriate. So as strongly as I was opposed to the war in Iraq, I'm in support of the war in Afghanistan. But that's a side issue. the main thing I'd like to talk about is the economy. And one thing that bothers me more than anything else is hypocrisy. And John McCain, who a scant 10 days ago said the fundamentals of the economy are strong, and now he's saying if we don't act by tomorrow, coincidentally the day of the first presidential debate, if we don't act by tomorrow, we're going to face disaster on Monday, recession, depression. I think that at the end of the day, the overriding issue on the minds of voters when they go into the polls is going to be the economy. There was no bigger proponent of deregulation over the past 25 years than John McCain and Phil Gramm. It's not me saying this. Anyone, if you have a computer, Google it, and you'll see. Strongest proponent. Now for him to be leading the charge to regulate this industry, and when he fought against regulation all these years, is laughable, absolutely laughable. I don't know what the answer is on the bailout. There are a lot of people a lot smarter than me that are trying to come to terms with this right now. I have an inherent problem with taxpayers investing this tremendous, incomprehensible amount of money to bail out these companies, certainly unless some very, very important safeguards are put in place, which Senator Obama has called for. Key amongst them is capping compensation for the executives of these companies. It's outrageous. And I got to say that, going back to hypocrisy, aside from Phil Gramm, who used to be one of Senator McCain's top economic advisors, and that's the gentleman that said that we're a nation of whiners and economic problems are all mental. That was what, a month ago that he said that. Carly Fiorina, the former CEO of Hewlett-Packard, who, before she was fired, laid off 20,000 employees and then got, thank you very much, a $42 million golden parachute when she was fired, is another one of John McCain's top economic advisors. So let's at least have an honest discussion, or try to have an honest discussion on this. And as I said, I used to have a tremendous amount of respect for John McCain, but the John McCain of today, the John McCain involved in this presidential race, is not the John McCain from 4 years ago. It's certainly not the John McCain from 8 years ago. The John McCain that was opposed to the Bush tax cuts, the John McCain that had the guts to stand up to the religious right and call them agents of intolerance. Now he's kissing up to the religious right. Now he's embracing the Bush tax cuts. Now and on the economy, I'm sorry, every other day he has a different position. Agree with him or not, at least Barack Obama has been consistent. He's been consistent on this issue. And not just the economy, not just the war, not just alternative energy, and we can have agreements or disagreements on some aspects of his alternative energy plan, but he's remained consistent. And that's what I respect. Again, with Senator McCain, from one day to the next, his position shifts, and unfortunately, I'm concerned that it's poll-driven. And one other thing, I promise not to say anything about Sarah Palin, but for a candidate whose slogan was "Country First," for his first major executive decision to choose someone that may have to stand in for him, a heartbeat away from the presidency, to choose governor of a state with a population smaller than the town of Hempstead, who was only governor for 18 months. Before that, mayor of a village about the same size of, town, about the same size as the village of Lloyd Harbor, where I live. I think it's insulting. And I'm not going to speak about Sarah Palin and some of her positions, but I think it's important because I think it's a comment on the judgment of Senator McCain and what he values and the priorities that he sees are important. And on that, I'm vehemently in disagreement. So I went over my time, but thank you.
Chris Garvey from Barr.
Our Republican representative here said that one should know what the principles of a candidate are. And the libertarian principle is a very simple one, that people should be free to do anything they want except to initiate force or the threat of force or fraud against other people or their property. And so Bob Barr, by taking on the libertarian candidacy, affirms that principle. I just want to ask a question here. How many people think the Iraq invasion was a good idea? Okay, I don't have to address it. Now, in terms of fraud, the banks and the Federal Reserve create money and get first dibs on it. You guys have to earn money. So it puts you at a huge disadvantage to the banks. It puts you at a huge disadvantage to the Federal Reserve. When you buy a house, you have to take money you earned and compete against money they create out of thin air, and therefore you have to borrow their money and indenture yourself for 30 years to the banks if you're making enough to even borrow it. This bailout is a power grab by the Federal Reserve and the Treasury. They're going to have huge power over the economy. They're going to be regulating securities. The Securities and Exchange Commission's role will be reduced, and we're going to have this secret cabal of bankers, the Federal Reserve, running our economy even more than they run it by controlling interest rates and creating currency out of thin air. If you print, in terms of regulation, there is an important regulation on currency. If you print currency, it's called counterfeiting, and they throw you in jail. When they print currency, they pass legal tender laws saying you have to accept that currency, and if you don't accept it, the debt is nullified. And so the legal tender laws force you to take this bad currency that you can't have any confidence in. The Foundation for Economic Education has a really interesting article on Canadian banking, talking about how the Canadian banks are much less regulated, much more free, and much more secure than these banks of ours that go up and down with the winds created by our Federal Reserve. And in fact, even if you try to make a secure currency, there was a group of people printing Ron Paul dollars, which had a certain amount of silver in them, so that these Liberty dollars, they call them, actually went up in value as the value of the dollar went down. And they raided their mint and confiscated all their coins because they don't want competition with their paper fiat money. Let's see. I guess that's all I wanted to say about what's to say. My haversack is made of hemp.
Being short and brief allows us to have more time for questions, so let's move ahead. Okay, Roger Snyder of the Green Party, so we can move it quickly and get people that have questions.
The third parties do actually agree. My shoes are made of hemp, so there are a number of things we agree on. I was thinking, libertarians are actually very good because they're very clear on what they stand for. And you can agree and you can disagree, and we agree very strongly on other things. On other things we agree extremely strongly, disagree. But I like that, and with John saying, the war in Afghanistan, yeah, it's very clear. Cynthia McKinney believes it was a mistake. Some of the generals there believe it was a mistake. And the Green Party is opposed to it. One of our key values is nonviolence. Anytime you use war to solve your problems, what you've done is create problems that will follow you then for decades, for centuries, whatever. It doesn't solve the problem. It's a key problem, and it's where we certainly disagree, and at least to know that there's this clear choice. I think there are other clear choices. There's a flyer that we put in back. It says Green Party issues the real differences, and it has a Republican and Democrat column, and you can check out. And this one explains a little bit and gives references for where the particular differences are. I'd also disagree with John on, I had a friend that was interested in Obama, and I said, wait till he wins or gets enough to win the primary, and he'll start to move to the center. which we call pulling to carry, and we used to call it pulling to gore, and, you know, we're back because that's what always happens. And he came to me screaming one day, and I don't remember what the issue was, but he said, "You were absolutely right. I'm furious, and maybe I'm still going to vote for him anyway because all the reasons that we hear." But at least he realized what was going on, and he said, "At least you can tell me what Cynthia McKinney stands for," which is what all we're asking for you to do, is to look at what she's talking about and what she stands for. There is another flyer in the back which says "Seize the Time." It's her position on the economic bailout, and beyond the specifics, which can make anyone's eyes glaze over, I just want to. She sees this as an opportunity, and I just want to do her summary on that particular position. This came out on the 19th, so there's a few things that have changed since then. But she says this: "The crisis does not have to be treated as a mere market correction or the result of a few rotten apples in an otherwise pristine barrel. The crisis truly represents the opportunity to introduce fundamental change in the way the U.S. economy and its political stewards operate. Responsible leadership demands that the pain and suffering being experienced by the innocent today not be revisited upon them or the next generation tomorrow. Sadly, instead of affirmative action being taken in this direction, the Bush administration rats up the drumbeats for war, Republican Party operatives busily remove designated voters from the voter rolls, our elected leaders in Congress go to campaign, while leaving us to fend for ourselves. For the administration and the Democratic-led Congress, I declare mission unaccomplished." That's it.
Mark Zablocki now, final comments.
Just by way of response, yeah, Mr. McCain did say that the fundamentals of the economy are solid. That thought was echoed by Barney Frank 2 days later. There's a major difference. Hold on one second. Okay. There's a major difference between economic fundamentals, economic activity, and the financial markets. One reflects the other. They do have points of intersection. The problem that is facing us right now with this current mortgage crisis, as it's being called, is that the impact isn't felt right now. 98% of the people in this country are paying their mortgages. 94% are working. There is trade, there is commerce, there is work. Durable goods orders are maintaining a solid level. Is there softness in certain sectors? Yes, there is. But the fact is that the fundamentals are sound. So why jump at this economic bailout, that it's just a Wall Street bailout? The fact is it isn't. Because the issues that are at play here aren't felt right away. They will be felt later on when it comes time for businesses to take short-term loans, bridge loans, so that they can continue functioning. When other people are coming out now to purchase, to acquire mortgages, to purchase a home, that's not going to be available, because the underpinning for many of these mortgage companies has been essentially a fraudulent document, a fraudulent security, in which there was no transparency in how that was backed. It was backed by bad debt. Bad debt does not ever provide a solid background. I'm puzzled as to why Mr. Cooper brought up the Graham bill. The Graham bill actually had to do with the removal of the barrier between investment banking and commercial banking. It allowed commercial banks to offer investment products, things like if you go into, for instance, a Chase Bank, you'll find a financial advisor there. They will help you structure your portfolio and so forth. That's what that bill dealt with. Suggesting that that had anything to do with this current problem in the credit market is like saying that the reason that the Mets bullpen is melting down is because the Giants won the Super Bowl last year. There is no connection between the two. Has Senator McCain shifted his position regarding the tax cuts? Yes, he did. He opposed them when the president first proposed them. He did because he felt that they would not work. When he looked at the influx of cash flowing into the Treasury as a result of the cut in taxes, when they came up for renewal in 2005, he supported them, and he continues to support them. It's counterintuitive to say that cutting tax rates increases revenue, but the fact is that it does. John Kennedy knew it, Ronald Reagan knew it, George Bush knew it. When we were in a recession in 2001, following the September 11th attacks, which put a freeze on everything, the airline industry pretty much curtailed all its activity. A lot of people were laid off. There are allied industries that were no longer doing the volume of business they were before. Those tax cuts were there as an incentive. And they worked. And that's why Senator McCain supported them when they came up for renewal in 2005. I'm really curious why the top of the ticket would question the experience of the second spot on our ticket. Because no matter how you cut it, no matter how you do it, the top of the ticket on your side does not, cannot match the experience that Governor Palin had. No. Senator Obama has been a senator for 4 years. In the course of those 4 years, he has been in the Senate 195 days. He's been out campaigning the rest of the time.
Wait, just wait. Let me finish.
Is there a problem?
We all disagree.
We'll disagree, but I can't, you can't change what's there. What has, where has...
Wait, let him finish. Go ahead, finish up and let's move on to the question and answer.
So it's a specious argument to put forward that the number 2 spot has no experience when the top of the ticket has none whatsoever. And as far as the specifics of the bailout plan glazing eyes over, I will agree with that yeah, that's what happens to my students too. But the fact of the matter is the specific is where the details of the problems are. And one of the things that whether I have been teaching a technology course, networking course, or a business course, when you are faced with a problem, unless you identify the problem, you are not going to fix it. It's that simple. You can throw another name on it, you can identify it as something else, you can give it any title you want, but unless you attack the problem where it is, you will not fix it, because you're always going off in the wrong direction. So yeah, the specifics can make eyes glaze over. I agree totally. But those specifics and those details are where the problem is.
Now, if you want to ask questions, I invite you to line up at the microphone. And while you're doing that, a couple of brief announcements. One is you need to be sure that you are registered. If you think you're registered, you may not be if you've not received the card in the mail, which specifies that. There's information in the flyer in the back which explains what you need information you need to have. And if you have questions, you can speak to Marge Acosta if you have any doubt about your registration. Number one. Number two, Nat has a brief announcements to start with for the activities of the Progressive Coalition's Huntington Chapter.
Two very brief things in terms of our group going on the Progressive Coalition. One, we'll be sending around a clipboard because we would really like to know who are these people who were so good to come out on a night of questionable weather, and you could have been home watching the minute by minute of what's happening in Washington. So please fill in your information because we'd really like to know about you. The other announcement is that on the back table, instead of me going through here, is a blue sheet that has a rundown of our next whole bunch of activities, all the details that you need. If you are a couple, please take only one because we don't want to run out. But on your way out, take the blue sheet and see what we've got coming out. Okay.
All right, now when you're going to start, I'm going to ask everybody here to try and be brief and to the point, only for the purposes of it, so everybody else can speak. And I want the respondents also to be very brief, please, and to the point, so we can get as much as we can. Go ahead.
My question for the Republican gentleman is, you did a very good job in trying circumstances, by the way.
I recognize you're coming in.
Of course, yeah. Okay. I have trouble understanding the conservative mindset at the beginning. If this country is just 300 million individuals working on their own lives and a big bad government, then of course everything the conservatives are for makes sense. Why do conservatives insist on denying the existence of a corporate sector? That corporate sector has huge money, more power, less visibility, less accountability than the government does. They're designed only for profit, unlike government. Since they're designed only for profit, a brief glimpse through our history shows that they cannot be trusted with the health and safety of their workers, with the safety of their products, with the health safety of the environment, with the well-being of the communities that they're located in, etc. So I'd like to understand, rhetorical question, Why conservatives just block out the existence, much less the power and the history of the corporate sector?
I'm not.
Mark, do you want to just come here just so we can keep on the TV? So just, you know, I don't mean, we're not well organized enough to have microphones at the table there.
I am not absolutely clear on your question. That which you are referring to, if I understand correctly, are actions that are taken by individuals that run corporations, who, by the way, are of both major parties and third parties. They act in a manner consistent for the owners of the corporation, which is stockholders. We heard earlier somebody mentioned about going to war over oil. And we hear Senator Obama's campaign castigating the oil companies and people in his party castigating the oil companies. Well, who owns the oil companies? The oil companies are owned by stockholders. Who owns the who owns the stock? The stock is held, 70% of the stock is held either directly or in a retirement fund by middle-class people. Police officers, firefighters, middle managers. Either they're managing their own portfolios or they're part of a fund that they've set up for or joined to gain it. As far as blocking out the corporate responsibility, I have to say that honestly, I don't know what you're talking about. I work with a colleague at the college who is a Democrat and who is a liberal. And we have found and do have common ground when it comes to vital community interests by the corporation. But the corporation's first responsibility is to its stockholders. They own it. So your question is a very broad one. And it's difficult to answer in a broad manner a question like that. Other than to say that there are individuals, and I did point this out when I talked about the recipients of the Fannie Mae political contributions, those recipients are in both parties. And, oh, okay. Go ahead. I just want to make sure we get the information.
Well, actually, my question is one that's going to be very difficult to answer, and it has to do with nuclear proliferation. Hypothetically, let's say a major metropolitan area such as New York City gets destroyed by nuclear weapons. All right, I'd like to know from each of the candidates, of the representatives of each of the candidates, what they would do in that situation. And if they can't answer this question, what would be done to prevent such a thing to happen in the first place, which I pray it never happens.
Okay.
You know, so that's my question.
Well, we'll take them one in order. If you want to answer them, you maybe just sit there and do it quickly. Chris, you have a comment?
I'll just quote from it. America should not be the world's policeman. The American... Okay, something caused feedback. You may have leaned against the knob.
All right, okay.
All right, but I guess
you're here. Go ahead.
Don't lean against the knob.
Yeah. Let's see. America should not be the world's policeman. The American purpose is to provide a strong national defense, not to engage in nation building or to launch foreign crusades, no matter how seemingly well-intentioned. Part of what the libertarians have been saying all along is and Barr has also said that, Barr said, why do we have a dog in every fight? This means that we're fighting with everybody. Either we're backing one side or the other in every conflict throughout the world. We'd be a whole lot more secure if America wasn't hated by half the... In fact, sometimes we back one dog and alienate everybody on the other side, and then we switch sides and back the other one, alienating 100% of the people in that region. So let's just get out of interfering with other people's countries, and that would make us a whole lot more secure from supposedly unprovoked attack.
Yeah, okay.
The first part of the question is a little hard to, taking out most of the East Coast, it's something we can almost not, I mean, I certainly can't speak for Cynthia on that. On the second part, I agree with clearly we would agree with what Chris just said. You know, if you have less enemies, it's less likely to happen. Doesn't mean it's never going to happen. You can always have some kooks or whatever, or people that are, you know, can do it, but you have less chance of it happening. The other thing is that nuclear power gives places both the means and the excuse to produce nuclear weapons. Promotion of nuclear power around the world by this country comes back to us in the form of nuclear weapons.
Rather than answer the question, because I don't know what Barack Obama would do if New York City was destroyed by nuclear weapons, but I got to say I disagree with the two gentlemen that just spoke. There are bad guys in the world, and there are people that are trying to destroy our country, to destroy our democracy. Osama bin Laden is one of them. Gaddafi was one before. So there are, I believe, and I think Senator Obama believes, that there are times when you've got to take a stand in the interest of our nation. And if you both feel that we should not be intervening, let's say in Afghanistan, where everyone agrees on all sides that that's where Al-Qaeda is reconstituting themselves. That's most likely where Osama bin Laden is. It's either there or the mountains of Pakistan. We have to make every effort to go after him and bring him to justice, not just because of the thousands of Americans that lost their lives in 9/11, but to prevent future 9/11s. But you have to choose your enemy properly. Our enemy was not Saddam Hussein. The only reason we invaded Iraq was because of the oil. If Iraq did not have oil, we would never have invaded. But I think it's great to live in a fantasy world, a fairy tale world, where you say, all we need to do is be friends with everyone else, and somehow they'll be friendly with us, and we'll have world peace. It doesn't work that way, because there are nuts out there. There are evil people out there, like Osama bin Laden. And I think it's entirely appropriate and necessary for us to act in our national interest and to bring them to justice and to destroy enemies that are attempting to destroy us.
Is it, you want to comment?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Wow, we're in agreement. The question actually was twofold. One, in response to it, the best thing to do is to prevent it from happening. To date, the best information that I have seen is that there are some 155 attacks that have been stopped as a result of the Patriot Act. Unlike my colleagues at the table, the Patriot Act is not about wiretapping, it is not about intrusion. It is wireless signal surveillance. The fact is that these people use open communication channels to keep in touch with each other. As far as proliferation goes, there's a sidelight perhaps many of you missed. About 2 weeks after Baghdad fell and Saddam sort of disappeared for a while, Muammar Gaddafi approached the United States and turned over the entire nuclear weapons development program that he had at the time that our CIA didn't even know he had. He did it for his own purposes. One of them, he saw what had happened to Saddam, and the other is that he had for years been attempting to ingratiate himself and work himself back into good standing with the United States and with the rest of the civilized world. That hardware and all of those documents that he turned over to us are currently in Oak Ridge, Tennessee. What do you do when it happens? It's an overwhelming problem. And I know that there are wiser heads than ours that are working on such scenarios. But I think it's more important and more effective to prevent it from happening to begin with. So, yeah, we do concur. We don't concur on the Iraqi action being about oil, because that's just a specious argument that doesn't make any sense. If it was true, why we're paying $4 a gallon, but that's beside the point. But
That's the benefits of the oil companies.
Yeah, okay.
Retirements,
Okay.
and so on.
All right, yeah, March.
My My question is more to Mr. Zablocki. I guess it has to do with McCain's saying, you know, that he represents this straight talk express. And right now, tonight even, I've heard things. Darfur has wholesale genocide, and we're not over there because there's no oil. We have the whole financial collapse is not just, everybody's talking the mortgage crisis, but we know there's a lot of other things. The fact that we are in trillions of dollars in debt over the next 10 years because of tax cuts. We've outsourced our jobs. We have so many people who don't have health care, and so we're paying for health care for many individuals. All that hasn't been addressed, and that's part of not being a straight talk express. But for instance, I would like to give one example that I want you to answer to. Right now, here we're talking about this collapse and foreclosures and how McCain is going to help us out. And we have states, for instance, in Michigan, Ohio, Nevada, the GOP are actually throwing people off the registration, the voter registration databases because they're in foreclosure. And they're saying that, well, you no longer live here, and therefore you can't vote. And there are legal actions being taken. This is something real. In Michigan, 60% of the population that has subprime mortgages are African American. So this is a deliberate direction to take people who would probably not be voting for McCain and to get them off these registration databases. How can he not condemn his own party if he's really the straight talk express?
With regard to the last part of the question, there have been instances where state organizations or 527s, which are the independent groups that are advocacy groups, essentially, have run ads that Senator McKinney felt was beyond the pale, and he did ask that those ads be taken down. With respect to what you mentioned about people being removed from voter registration rolls, I have not heard anything about this, and I can't address that part of it. The 60% of subprime lending, subprime mortgages being African American, this goes back most likely to the genesis of the program. The goal was noble. Nobody's going to deny that. The goal was to expand home ownership. But as anybody who has a mortgage knows, and who has gone through the mortgage process knows, you've got to be able to demonstrate that you can pay it back. So at the same time, while money was becoming cheaper and lenders were facing internal pressure to get the money out there to make loans, the regulatory agencies were demanding that a larger and larger amount of those mortgages, of that mortgage portfolio, be expanded essentially to people who it would be known would not be able to pay it back.
My question was, why is he allowing his own, and these are not 501 groups, these are the secretaries of state in some of the cases, these are election officials who are throwing these people off the voter registration databases. And so why is he not talking out against that?
Again,
and this is his part.
I have not heard
I'll give you some material.
If that is what is actually happening, if that's what's happening, it's unconscionable and it's intolerable. This is not even an issue, and I'm certain that
Can we quote you on that?
Next commercial. You heard it here first. You know and I know.
Okay. All right,
it's not acceptable.
Let's move on.
I just want to say that,
All right,
Mark, I mean, she's absolutely right. Hundreds of thousands, if not millions, certainly hundreds of thousands of voters in many of the battleground states have already been thrown off the voter rolls. It's a tremendous problem. I received a dozen inquiries about this just today, and I checked with Obama headquarters in Chicago, and they have a team of lawyers working state after state, Wisconsin and Michigan and Florida and Pennsylvania, trying to deal with this problem. But it's a very aggressive effort, and everyone knows why it's being done. Very aggressive effort on the part of the Republican parties in these states to disenfranchise voters, and it's not fair and it's unfortunate.
It's not a question of disenfranchising voters, but another thing too is that there has to be, and again, I don't know, I can't address this, your part of it because I don't know, but there has to be a regular scrubbing of voter rolls. People die, people move.
Right. Not like this.
Yeah, no, and again, I'm not stepping away from that, and I don't have any doubt that Senator McCain would.
I just like to make one brief comment.
Okay, all right.
One of the best tools to disenfranchise voters is the war on drugs, which gives so many of them felony records, particularly those who support legalizing drugs.
That varies.
Yes, it does. But
That varies by state, so that's a state.
I'm not a member of any of these parties. I'm a member of the Working Families Party.
Okay.
How many here have called their Congress people to voice their opinion of this bailout? A few. I had a paper on the back with 5 telephone numbers, and you should call each of those numbers tomorrow morning and tell them that you don't want this bailout to be a gift. You want it to be a loan. Let them pay it back. They've stolen the money from credit cards and everything else. The bailout is a very important thing to our... the other question I have is, why doesn't one of the parties tell us the real deficit that this country's in monetarily? Well, they told you the billions is taken to use the war. They haven't told you about the trillions they spent to make the munitions for the war. And since this party has been in office, it's gone from 6 trillion to 10 trillion. And that's something, if you divide it by the number of people here, how many can pay for it? How many does it take to pay for it? None of us got enough money to pay that off. So we are in bankruptcy right now, whether you know it or not.
Let me suggest here that we get a few more questions, comments before, and then people sum up, so that everybody can get a chance to maybe take some notes on it and then respond to it. We can give everybody a chance to sum up because time is running short. So you go, we'll let everybody go and say something. No. Go ahead.
One very quick question to Bob Barr regarding the Patriot Act. To my recollection, it was in 2001.
Right.
I don't think that Senator Obama was a U.S. Senator.
No, but it's been renewed. It's been renewed this year.
Right, and how did McCain vote on it?
I don't know. He voted for it?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah, so
so,
Obama voted for it.
but you only made an objection about Obama, and believe me,
That's just because I
I was
didn't know
not
how
happy
McCain-
with the Pfizer vote myself.
Yeah.
But to McCain, I just have to say that it is just amazing that the Republicans constantly want to tell people and think that Americans can believe that a 47-year-old man has been doing absolutely nothing since he graduated from Harvard, has absolutely no experience, that for 8 years he sat in the Senate in Illinois and did absolutely nothing, that as a matter of fact, he sponsored and co-sponsored over 800 bills, and many of them passed. He worked across party lines both in that Senate and in this Senate, traveled with Richard Lugar regarding nuclear proliferation, and it's just unconscionable that you just keep using these sound bites, no experience, and to compare him to a woman who has sat in and done, has very little experience, that they're shielding because she can't even answer questions. Yesterday she told Katie Garrett, I'll get back to you on that question. It's just, we're not fooled, we're not stupid.
We'll give everybody a chance to respond.
I would just like to kind of follow up what she just
And
said.
we'll give everybody a chance to comment.
It just seems that, the McCain campaign keeps talking about how, the scare tactics, which is, I guess, worked for the last 8 years, but now they're continuing in saying that Barack Obama is going to tax the middle class, he's going to raise your taxes, which he has said, and his surrogates have said every day, 20 times a day, that he's going to cut taxes for the middle class, 95% of the people that make $250,000 or less. How is that not going to help the economy if he cuts taxes for people that need the extra money? Isn't that going to be put back into the economy?
Okay. All right. You'll get a chance. I'm going to give him a chance. I want everybody to make questions and you'll sum up. Okay? I just want to make sure everybody gets a chance to comment, and then you'll sum up all four. You can sum up.
To me, these debates are great because it reinforces that there are more opinions out there than represented by the Democratic and Republican parties. And we need open debates like this for the real presidential candidates, though these people have done wonderfully. I'd like a one-word answer to this question from everyone. You can give the speeches afterwards, one word. Does your candidate support single-payer, universal health care? Not, quote, affordable health care, single-payer, universal health care.
Okay, people will all answer that. Okay, thank you. Well, we'll try to remember them and get back to them.
To the major political party candidates, since you represent the two of them, will your candidates include, or will they debate Bob Barr, Cynthia McKinney, Ralph Nader, Chuck Baldwin, and all the other third-party candidates? Because to me, this is like a circus, a political circus, and you guys don't seem to be getting to the issues, but you're getting to the personalities here. I mean, I'm a young person in my mid-30s, and I can't afford to live up here anymore.
I think the answer to that is very simple and clear. The answer is no, so we don't have to spend the time. I mean,
Will
the answer
they
is
do
no.
it?
The answer is no. But anyway, let's get on to the next
Another
one.
comment.
There's two more questions.
McCain is no.
There's two more.
He's no Barry Goldwater, and Obama's no FDR or Kennedy.
Okay, good. Last, make them short to the point, and then we'll get the summations, because we have to be out by 9 o'clock.
I have a question about Senator McCain's health plan. His health plan, if you get health benefits from your employer, now you're going to have to pay taxes on those benefits, according to his plan. But you get a tax credit, which you can use to help pay for your insurance, assuming you can find insurance that costs the amount of the tax credit. You don't get the money, you just get this credit, and then you have to go buy your own insurance. Now, if somebody is retired and has a Medicare supplemental package provided by the employer they used to work for, will they have to pay taxes on that benefit? Is question number one. And question number two is, also if you're retired and you pay for your own supplemental insurance, and let's say you don't pay income tax because you have a low, only Social Security income. If you're paying for your supplemental insurance, will you get a credit the way the other people will? The tax credit that I referred to?
Right. Okay. Yeah, no. Two more.
So I'll keep this very short. I consider this a suggestion rather than a question. I really think it's of vital importance that each person who is going to take the time and effort and consideration to go and vote, to remember to consider each of the candidates and who they will choose to align themselves for Supreme Court Justice nomination.
I find it, I wonder about the financial crisis. This has been building for 30 years, and now, within 40 days of the election, the problem has to be solved by Monday morning. I'm astounded by that, and I wonder, does anybody think it's suspicious? Yeah. The other thing is, the United States government has spent $300 million building detention camps in places unknown, secret locations. Is anybody concerned about that? Thank you.
I thank everyone for their questions. And now perhaps we can begin. Maybe we'll start and go the reverse order. And Mr. Zablocki had several things to say in some of these questions, so I want to address that first. Try to be brief and to the point because we have to be out of here by 9 o'clock, but we seem to be making it.
Okay. I had actually difficulty keeping up with the issues, with the matters. Regarding Darfur, Sudan does have oil. They also have a sweetheart oil deal with China that they've engaged in for a long time. The issue has been raised from time to time. It does show up. Is there a compelling national interest in going in there? Well, if everything was oil as been suggested by others, yeah, there would be. I personally, and I can only speak as far as this goes, I personally believe that we should have been in to stabilize Darfur long ago. This has been going on for a very, very long period of time and has been virtually ignored by everybody. In answer to the question, one-word answer about single-payer universal health care, the McCain answer is no. and a simple examination of what actually happens mechanically in Canada or France or Germany or Britain, where routine treatments and medications that are available here are not available because they are not considered cost-effective by the government, is just not an acceptable solution. Canada, as an example, if you remember a few years ago, President Clinton needed a bypass. Within 3 days, the surgery was done. That is not unusual for the overwhelming majority of Americans. If it's discovered that you need a bypass, that surgery gets done. But in Canada, you go on a waiting list that can be as long as 18 months. Periodically, that waiting list is scrubbed. Not because people got better, but because they died, or it was deemed that the surgery was too risky to perform. What does that mean, too risky? What it means is that they're going to do the surgery and your condition is deteriorating to the point that you probably will not survive, which means they're not going to get enough useful life from you. Therefore, it's not cost-effective to do the surgery. That's simply not an acceptable solution. There are other instances. For instance, in England, a gentleman has cancer.
Well, let's not go on because let's not go on.
Okay.
Could you answer my question about healthcare?
Regarding the credits, tax credits would be there. Tax credits are better than deductions.
No. I want to know if you have a retirement package that includes supplemental insurance. Is that going to be taxable the way employer-provided health care is going to be taxable?
Well, employer-provided health care comes out of payroll.
Yeah, I don't. My question is, if you're getting health care benefits from an employer that you used to, that you're retired from, are those benefits going to be taxable?
Are you talking about the payment to the practitioners in your name?
No, I'm talking about it's taxable.
Would it be added to tax?
Honestly, I don't know. My impulse to say is probably not.
Probably not. What is Senator McCain? What is Senator McCain?
You'll have to look at it. We can't. I mean,
it's not on the website.
Okay, you can't. All right, that's of course you can't answer. Okay.
Right, financial crisis. I mentioned earlier. Yes, it's been brewing for 30 years. Why did it come up now? Because it actually came to a critical condition at this point. 40 days to elections, absolutely it does, as the gentleman said, it's suspicious. And the fact that but it is also being addressed in a bipartisan way. Why does it have to be done before Monday? Because the Senate adjourns and the deal needs to be done.
They don't have to go on vacation.
But you want to? All right. You want to go? John, you want to go?
The speaker has to go off on her book tour, so
all right, John, Harry, please, look, if you be quiet, we'll let the guy finish. John, your time.
Addressing something that he said directly.
That's why we have other people on the panel here. So, John, would you speak? You want to comment? You want to criticize? Go ahead. Do what you want to do.
Because we're running out of time.
Running out of time.
First of all, just briefly on healthcare. As I was driving here today, they did a piece on NPR. And they talked about a family that had a newborn that had a serious health emergency. They thought the child was covered by insurance. They had $300,000 in hospital bills. Then they found out that the insurance company refused to cover the illness. They had to sell their home, moving into an apartment. They had to sell their cars. She now has to go back to work. It's upended their lives.
Is that Cigna?
I don't know. It's by the insurance company. As far as taxes, I forget who asked this question, but it's absolutely right. McCain is continually still runs ads saying Barack Obama will raise your taxes. And he's been as clear as possible, time after time, week after week, month after month. It's on his website, speeches, position papers, his commercials. If you earn under $250,000 a year, you'll get a tax cut, in some cases a substantial tax cut, under Barack Obama's tax plan. If you earn over $250,000 a year, your taxes will go up. Not by too much. This is studied by the Tax Policy Center, a nonpartisan joint venture of the Brookings Institution and the Urban Institute. $227,000 will go up $12. But if you earn $603,000 a year in annual income, under Barack Obama, your taxes will go up $115,000. Under John McCain, you'll get a tax cut of $45,000 a change. If you earn $3 million a year. If your annual income is $3 million a year, top 0.5% of income earners, under Barack Obama, your taxes will go up $701,885. Under John McCain, you'll get a tax cut of $269,000 and change. If you earn $3 million, there's something wrong with that picture. And it's disingenuous, it's misleading, and it's unconscionable that to this day, the McCain campaign is still running ads trying to scare voters into thinking that their taxes are going to go up. If you earn $3 million a year, my taxes will go up under the Barack Obama tax plan. But I also have 5 kids, and each kid, by the way, you'll get a $4,000 a year tuition tax credit under Obama that you won't get under McCain. By the way, someone had mentioned something about detention centers overseas.
Oh, in the country, in this country.
Yeah. No, I think it was
it's in this country.
I want to just talk about extraordinary rendition, where we send suspects overseas where we know they're going to be tortured. It's unconscionable. That's been a policy of the Bush administration, and Barack Obama said that he'll end that the day that he takes office.
Universal health care, yes or no? Single-payer universal health care, Barack Obama.
Can I give an asterisk? Yes.
No. Single-payer?
Yes. You said what? Excuse me. His position is, he said on the record that if it was up to him, he would have single-payer. But he also said that he wanted to have something that will actually pass Congress. That's the answer. And so therefore he wants to start off with this, but the goal, he has said, the goal would be ultimately single-payer, and if he had to do it from scratch, it would be single-payer. That's his position.
Roger? We'll go fast through this. If the U.S. in the form of the CIA was in Afghanistan to begin with, we wouldn't be going back there to fix the problems, that we were fixing the problems and fixing the problems. We created the problems in Afghanistan. Voter registration rolls, we know very well in the Green Party because somebody kind of keeps trying to knock us off. It's a problem.
Stay away from that.
It's a problem everywhere. It's a problem everywhere. In fact, they will tell you you can't enroll in the Green Party, but of course you can. You can check the box and sign in the Green Party. About the bailout, actually earlier today, for lunchtime, I spent my time in the street corner helping people hold up a sign that said no bailout, corporate bailout. I want to note that the Green candidates are the only ones that take no corporate contributions, so we're not beholden to do a corporate bailout of any sort. Single-payer universal health care. Yes, in fact, going through the 10 points of Cynthia McKinney, I noticed she mentioned it in 4 of her 10 points. Detention camps, Cynthia McKinney is the only one that mentions repeatedly about no U.S. held political prisoners. And there was on the debate, just this quote that came out from Cynthia. She says, if John McCain wants to be out of the debate, she's willing to step in and take his plea.
Chris, go ahead.
Osama was a U.S. CIA creation back when we needed an enemy, and the Soviet Union was the best enemy money could buy. But they fell down on the job, so we had to turn to the Arabs for an enemy to justify the military industrial establishment. It's not just wireless surveillance. The FBI has the capability of monitoring every phone call in the United States over the wires. Congress required them to put that capability in. Gaddafi, interestingly enough, was the first leader to indict Osama as a terrorist because he put a fatwa on Gaddafi after Gaddafi said, no, I'd rather not have you in Libya. And he was highly incensed that the United States didn't want to do anything about Osama. He was willing to help bring Osama to justice. The fraud in the loans, a lot of it started on the front lines where bank loan people were incentivized to tell their clients to lie on their loan applications, and did so. And so that was the beginning of it. But it's gone all the way down the line, and a lot of these people, a lot of these investors felt that why should they worry? Fannie Mae, this government organization, was guaranteeing the value of these things. Does our candidate support the off-budget stuff? Yeah, there's a lot of that, and we'd like to reduce the budget completely. As one Libertarian presidential candidate says, there are a lot of people in the Libertarian Convention who think the government budget should be 1%, 2%, or even $10. So we'd like to reduce it a lot.
I have to.
The age issue, George Washington was 19 when he was a colonel in the American militia. Unfortunately, he did start the French and Indian War. Does our candidate support single-payer health care? No, we don't trust the government to have a monopoly over your health care, to tell you can't use vitamins. And by the way, bypasses have been shown not to increase your life span.
Chris, I have to, because we really have to get out. Let me say.
Debate the other candidates.
Let me take this opportunity to thank our 4 speakers for their presentation. I apologize for the scratching of the time, but that's the requirement of the library. Those who want to join us to continue the discussion, of course, at the diner, are welcome to do so, as we've been doing that regularly, and we'll go over the diner, anyone who wants to join us. But hopefully we'll see you back next month. And remember that the coalition has its monthly meetings, its chapter meetings on the 3rd Tuesday of the month at the Cinema Arts Center at 7 o'clock. Thank you very much.